Well, welcome to the Vet S.O.S podcast. Remember, don't drown the sea of transition. Grab the Vet S.O.S Lifeline. Keith and I are sitting down today to talk about the albatross around our veterans community neck once again. This is one of those topics that is super important and one that I hate that we have to keep talking about. We have Dr. Keita Franklin of the Columbia Lighthouse Project here with us to talk suicide prevention and what their program is doing to try and help. But before we go any further with that, I just want to, mention for everybody, if you need help, please reach out to somebody. Call 988, call a friend or a family member. Whatever you do, just please contact somebody because we'd rather have you here. And I guarantee you every veteran feels the same. So please reach out if you need assistance. On that note, Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay, man. I wish we didn't have to keep having to come back to this topic, but if talking about it saves one life, then this conversation we'll have it as many times as it takes to keep to address the situation. So I'm doing okay. How about you, Sean?
I can't complain. I cannot complain. Things are going well. And, like we talked about earlier, the most dangerous thing I do these days is go to sleep, and when I wake up, see if I'm injured. Today I woke up with no new injuries, so it's a good day, right?
Absolutely.
Joys of being over 50. And from what I hear from my friends, it just gets worse. All right,
I'm not
here
even
we
there
go.
yet, and my check engine light's on, so it's yeah.
Well, I fully believe that growing old is not for the weary. You got to get after it. All right, so here we go. Now we're way off base. Dr. Keita Franklin is nationally recognized public health leader with more than 25 years of experience advancing suicide prevention, behavioral health, and large-scale systems changes across the Department of Defense, Department of Veteran Affairs, and the healthcare industry. During her federal career, she helped transform the VA suicide prevention strategy into a comprehensive public health model while leading initiatives that impacted millions of service members, veterans, and their families. Today, she serves as Vice President of Healthcare Strategy at TriWest Healthcare Alliance and co-director of the Columbia Lighthouse Project, where she leads national and international efforts to expand evidence-based suicide prevention practices. An accomplished author, scholar, and advisor, Dr. Franklin continues to shape public health policy and leadership through research, executive education, and service on numerous national boards and advisory committees. Keita, I'm so happy you're with us here today. Looking forward to jumping into the work that you're doing. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much. It's a good way to spend a Saturday morning.
Absolutely. And we just need more people to buy into that. All right. So you are a mil spouse or veteran spouse. So let's hear your transition story. So from that perspective, what was it like going through the transition?
Yeah, we transitioned. My husband, yeah, he was active duty Air Force. He worked in the area of nuclear weapons, ICBMs, and we were in Germany. And he transitioned out, and it was a bumpy time. It was 2007, so sort of well into the war effort. And we transitioned back sort of separately. I also had a full career and I was working in Army Community Services at the headquarters level there at, they called it Headquarter Yukon. And so I came back first. And he stayed and finished out a few more months there. I think even close to 6 or so months he stayed there. And I came back with one child and he stayed there with one child. One was still in school. And so we hesitated to take her out of school. The other one was preschool age, and so I took him with me. So it was just two households and all that goes with moving back from overseas with pets and household goods. And he had quite a few uncertainties about jobs as well. He ended up landing in the defense contracting sector at the Pentagon, but yeah, it was definitely a rocky time, I will say.
That's what first of all, I love all our stories about transition because every one of them is different. But hearing spouse transition stories, you get to hear the personal side and the family side more, and the fact that you had two completely separate households with even the children separated because school versus not school, just an amazing story. That's absolutely fantastic. So you have a long, um, I want to say story, but you have a long history of experience in this field in the work you've done and working with veterans and the suicide prevention and trying to fight this whole thing. So tell us a little bit about this organization that you're working with, Columbia Lighthouse Project.
Yeah, the Columbia Lighthouse Project, it's a nonprofit associated part of Columbia University. And, I first met this organization at the time I was leading behavioral health for the Marine Corps. Right when we came back from Germany, we landed in Stafford, Virginia, and I worked at Fort Belvoir for a few years before going on for a PhD in social work, which was a whole experience in and of itself to sort of study wartime issues and the mental health impact of wartime issues during the war. And so I stepped out of federal service for a few years and did that and came back in at Quantico and found myself leading behavioral health for the Marine Corps. And at that time, the rates of suicide were high for the Marine Corps, like the other branches. And keep in mind, of course, all that you and Keith both know about the Marine Corps being the smallest of all the service branches, which in a way you can sort of, I think, compared to the other branches, get your arms around it a little more. Like it's a smaller group that you can sort of design programming for in a very targeted way. And at that time, our suicide rates were on the rise and we were really looking for answers. And the way that we were attacking it was to just focus on Marines that showed up at the hospital and said, "Hey, I'm at risk." And the likelihood of that happening was next to nil. In part, Navy medicine owned our medical side of the house. And middle of the war effort, the Marines were not going to raise their hand and say they were at risk of suicide. That was going to get in the way of their next deployment. And no less, they weren't really going to go to the hospital unless they were like near death. Yeah. So it was like expecting us to capture people at risk for suicide by waiting for them to self-refer into the medical system was just, we very quickly realized that was not the answer. And so we start looking at other options and we really started digging into our data. And this is an interesting data point that I don't think we talk enough about in the field, particularly in the veterinary. One of the data findings, and I'll never forget that day, the then Commandant had this sort of process called the 8-day report. And it was really like, let's track the Marines. And I have no idea the significance of 8 days. Maybe you veterans know more so than I. But like, what
I
was
make
happening?
it a rule, try not to get in the mind of a Marine.
I was going to say, counting to 8 is hard enough. So,
okay. Like, yeah.
Going beyond that. Yeah.
It's particularly, yeah. So the 8 days leading up to her death. Yeah, we also have to have humor when we're talking about this subject, because if not, it'll get you. But we were tracking the days leading up to their death by suicide, and were they in the hospital? Had they seen the doc? Had they, gotten an Article 15? Had they been in some sort of trouble? And one of the findings was that the Marines were touching the legal system in the days leading up to their death by suicide. And it wasn't always for things you might imagine. Like in some cases, they weren't in trouble for some sort of big astronomical thing, but maybe they were, going through a divorce, or maybe they had a speeding ticket, or maybe, it was in some cases something that you and I think is very recoverable. And so it was at that point that we thought, well, is that a missed opportunity? Like, should we be engaging with these lawyers if they're intuitively going in to see them? And then within the days, leading up to their death by suicide. So we reached out to the Columbia Lighthouse. It was actually an active duty member of my team. And there was a journal that sort of spoke to the fact that this tool, this very simple screening tool that asks, about 6 questions, maybe 2, if they don't answer positively to the first 2, you don't have to do the other 4. And we invited them down to Headquarters Marine Corps to have a conversation with us to ask if we could take a tool like that and move it outside the medical system into initially working with the attorneys. And in fact, they were very collaborative with us and came down and we rolled out this tool. And I'll never forget that the attorneys at the time were saying, when the Marines leave my office, particularly some of them that are in trouble for very serious things that are sort of taboo, like, maybe they've gotten in trouble for stealing. We know Marines don't steal. Marines don't do certain, they don't do these things. And now they're in trouble for something like that, even abuse crimes and the like. There is this like fall from glory, like in a big way, from like wearing the uniform to being in trouble. And the attorneys would say, like, I would worry about them when they left my office. And so it would be good if I had a tool I could use. And so that was the beginning. And I want to say that was maybe 2009 or so that I first met the organization. And I stayed in touch and we did some incredible work. We trained our family readiness officers. We trained spouses. And really the idea was to like, that was but one tool, but to like take the tools out of the clinic and get them into the universal hands of everybody, like the front desk worker at the gym. If a Marine always comes to the gym and looks a certain way, they come in, they start looking differently. Maybe that guy that does small talk at the gym could even say like, how are you? And I haven't seen you in a while, and maybe start to ask some questions if they had to. So that was my early beginnings with the Lighthouse.
I have to admit, when you said that you were the director of behavioral health for the Marine Corps, I envisioned a warden at a loony bin.
Nope. Just a little Susie social worker over here.
Oh, so talk about jobs I don't want, Keith. I would rank that one up there near the top.
Right?
Yeah. What do you think, man?
Well, and I don't know why, but I gotta add, like, the Columbia Lighthouse Project. Where does their name come from? Like, what does that originate out of?
That is such a good question, because initially the project, it had this like super scientific name, Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale, something or other. It was like, that was not going to resonate with anybody. And so I think they like hired a marketing team who came in and said, you have got to bring this into universal language. And when you bring hope, it's like a lighthouse that has a light shining. And I think the thinking was like, if people see hope and they see this like light shining in the future, take me to it. That was like some of the early. Now we call it the Columbia Protocol, just to like not have to keep saying the CSSRS, Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. It's too much for people.
That's crazy. What's so funny, Sean?
I'm still stuck on the Marine Corps. Oh my goodness gracious! All right, so
go
ahead.
Can you walk the listeners through kind of in plain language, like, so you mentioned the tool, right? So this rating scale thing, like, in plain language, because I might not be a Marine, but I'm still pretty dumb. What is the tool? I know our Marines. My father's a Marine. I got nothing but love for the Marine Corps. What is the tool? How's it used? And like, why does screening matter when it comes to someone who doesn't look like they're in crisis, quote unquote?
Yeah, the tool, I mean, what we found really quick, and I should have told you the tail end of that story, is once we implemented the tool, we implemented a number of other changes at the Marine Corps over those first like year or two when we really started digging into this. We did see a reduction. Like the first year we saw a reduction in suicide rates. Within that 202,000 Marine population, we saw a reduction by 14%. The second year we saw a reduction by 22%. And it was really like an all hands rollout of this tool and many others, right? Getting leadership involved, like I probably would say, was like probably one of the biggest benefits, like at the very senior levels. Like at the time, it was General Amos and General Dunford who got involved and really started getting out and talking to Marines about taking care of one another and peer support. But the thing with the tool and equipping the Marines with the tool was really about getting them comfortable asking the questions like, hey, have things gotten so bad that you're thinking of ending your life? Instead of like bouncing around it and sort of hinting at it, like just outright, just like in true Marine style, just like straight to it, right? Like, are you thinking of ending your life? And if so, how? Like, how often have you thought about this? And like asking a series of questions, which then sort of rates them into whether or not they're at low, moderate, or high risk. But the screener is really about identifying not only are they struggling, but do they have a plan? Have they been like pulling together content or things to enact their plan? And you'll hear from the Marines, and they'll tell you that, like, surprisingly, people think you have to have this like deep, close relationship with someone before they tell you. Absolutely not. You can hardly know them, and you can sense something and ask them, and you will be surprised when they say, yeah, I'm taking leave on this day. I'm going home to my parents. They live in, rural Indiana. I know where my father keeps his firearm in the barn. I intend to go there and do this. And like, they will just tell you. And so if they do have a plan and they are sort of collecting the means to execute that plan, and they don't feel like they have any resources or anybody available to help them, they feel like they're a burden, like the questions sort of get after some of that, like what is their intent and how likely are they moving from thoughts to action.
Yeah. And so you bring up a great point too, is like, I don't feel qualified as the
Yes.
the person. So what are some concrete steps and phases that you would recommend for folks to use that can start a conversation and connect them with connect them with help or 988 or whatever resources they have at their disposal?
Yeah, I mean, I always say it's better, certainly, if you do know them and have a relationship. So if there is somebody and and maybe you don't know them that well and you can tag in someone who does, great, but don't let that be a barrier to like go ahead in, even if you don't know them. And once you ask the questions and you're able to see if they're high, moderate, or low risk, that sort of defines your pathway and sort of and what you do. And of course, if they're high risk, you don't leave them alone. And that is when you get them into a medical situation. That is absolutely. If they're moderate risk, they may need support. They obviously will need support, I should say, but it's not always, hospitalization and the like. Sometimes it's like getting them into an urgent therapy appointment. Sometimes it's getting them, into the hands of a fellow vet who can help them. The thing that we've learned about suicide over the years is that people that die by suicide, when we've interviewed hundreds of people that have attempted and lived, believe it or not, even with a firearm that they've lived, and we've interviewed them, and inevitably what they'll say is they wanted the pain to stop. Like they'll say they did not want to die by suicide. Like I've never interviewed or read a research study in, as long as I've been in this field from 94 to present that said like somebody attempted and in fact wanted to die. Like this is just never the case. The will to live is strong, but definitely they feel disconnected and they feel like they're a burden. They feel overwhelmed and not able to cope in that moment. And suicide risk, it is fluid. And if we can get them through that crisis, we can get them on a path for healing. And what we say in the field, like a life worth living.
Yeah.
I like that.
And I read a study, it was, I don't know, over a decade ago now, I think, but it was done on all the survivors of the Golden Gate Bridge, right? And I
Yes.
think that's the number one location in the
Yep.
country. And all the survivors, and I think I read that it's like every single person, every single one, like 100% of all the people they interviewed said that the second their feet left the railings, they regretted their decision. They immediately regretted it. And
Yep.
so, like you said, it's that will to live. It's just it's in the, but you're just in this moment, and until you get that release, in this case, your feet leave that
Yep.
railing. It's like this release and you're brought back to your senses and you think, oh my God, what have I just done? Yeah. So when you look at the landscape today, what would you say are the most urgent gaps, either community, clinical, policy, whatever, that still need to be closed up to actually bend the suicide curve?
Such a good question. I continue to worry about, despite the fact that we've shifted away from sort of what I shared about it being a hospital model, there is still a tendency for that in our field. And it's just this, I don't know, comfortable, easy model where we have mental health providers who sit in their offices between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday, and wait for people to come to them and have their appointments. And it's clean and, in their mind, it's a clean, traditional model of care. And I think like we're not going to get there until we continue to shift away from that model and bring the tools like out into the community to the people. And so we have to get more comfortable. I always sort of, when I was at the VA, I would talk a lot about like, how do we meet veterans where they work, live, and thrive, not where they come get hospital care. Like, and just how hard it is to get someone. Like, I don't know if either of you have ever tried to get someone to go to the hospital. Like, even for a physical ailment, like it is not easy, like getting someone else to go to the hospital. Like, particularly men.
I know how hard it is to get me to go to the hospital.
Yes.
I was having a
yes.
heart attack and I was still arguing I didn't need to go to the hospital.
Case in point. So getting them to go in, if we just rely on hospital-based methods, we will have missed. And, over 2/3 of the veterans that die by suicide never see the VA in the days leading up to their death. So it was like a very interesting model if you follow the funding. If we were to put all of our resources inside the hospital and got it right 100% of the time, we would have hit 1/3 of the deaths by suicide. Vice getting the resources into the community. And I always think too that when we engage veterans in a life worth living that includes meaningful employment, that they feel a sense of like just value and
That's
passion
huge.
about, or it could be volunteerism. It doesn't always have to be employment, but it's really hard to go from being like one of our nation's most treasured heroes and security defender type people to a job that is like they don't feel enough passion in their heart for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I think is part of what's so important about your work in the transition space, because we saw in the data at the VA that initially we saw the first 12 months after veterans transition out of the military that they are at high risk. Fast forward, the analysis continued, and it shows that the suicide rate stays steadily high for the first 5 years after transition.
Wow.
And so that is such a bumpy time around like loss of identity, mission, purpose. That is a hard time where we really need to, I think, to your question, like ramp up resources for folks, is particularly the first 5 years.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, and that lines up with a lot of statistics and studies I've read regarding employment. Like, I think the average veteran has I think it's 3 to 5 jobs in the first 4 to 6 years. Right. So yeah, I mean, we're just that 5-year mark, give or take, plus or minus a year is, yeah, it's bumpy. We're jumping from job to job because we're trying to find ourselves. We're trying to figure out what we like, what we don't like. Or in some cases, we are struggling to hold down a job for whatever reason. And yeah, I mean, transition, yeah, it goes well beyond just getting that DD 214
Right.
and
Yeah, it's
sayonara
interesting too, because when you're on active duty, and you see a lot of the research on like unit cohesion and on good leadership and how that is a protective factor for mental health issues. So when there's like strong esprit de corps, tight unit, the units fare better, and it serves as a buffer for the onset of mental health issues like PTSD, depression, anxiety, panic. And when you have a good leader, we'll transition that into private sector. Like there's no unit maybe in first responder work, you all could argue me, like in firefighting or in law enforcement, there's like a bit of a unit that you rally around.
Sure.
But I think they're looking for that sense of cohesion in the workplace. And some employers have it and some don't. And it doesn't mean that they're bad, I think, as an employment agency. If there's not unit cohesion, it's just not part of their culture. So I think that contributes to them bouncing around so much. Like you're not going to find a friend at work all the time, the way you did on active duty.
Yeah. No, it's 100% accurate. Yeah. John, what about you? You bounced around a little bit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think the other factor there is just, especially the longer you stay in the military, some of us get tired of dealing with certain types of, let's call it BS. And so you just, you move to the next job. And, there's so many factors I think that go into it, but definitely the unit cohesion one, I think, is huge. That loss of tribe that we talk about all the time, being able to find that. So with Columbia Lighthouse Project, the Columbia Protocol, how do well, like, is this working through this? Is this something that the individual can just come to you? Or is this where we want organizations to get involved to run it within their organizations? How's that look? What are we looking at there?
Yeah, we've been so fortunate in the past 3 years. The Lighthouse Project has received a grant through this capability called Face the Fight, which is sort of maybe you all know about it, a capability whereby a number of private sector organizations have pooled funds into, led by USAA, into a pot that then allows organizations to put in for grants. So we've gotten some grant dollars to then go out and train the VSOs on the Columbia Protocol. And it's been an interesting few years. We have had very good success with the American Legion, where they have stood up this campaign called Be the One. And it's really about like be the one to step in and help others. But we've trained them with this like tactical level tool. And, and I've done a lot of the training myself. And I've just been so amazed to get in front of these, in many cases, older veterans that, served in Vietnam and that have struggled with PTSD and depression for years and not asked for help. And then also have wanted to help each other and not always known what to do. And we'll train them. And after the training, there'll be like long line waiting to talk one-on-one about, a time that they've intervened on suicide risk. And maybe they got it bumpy and clumsy, not all the way right. And another time when maybe they did get it right. And they have all manner of experiences that I think have not been tapped into for, bringing, to the suicide fight. So that's been interesting. But we've also been training other other VSOs as well, just across the board. And the idea for the tool that we're trying to do is to get people to embed it into the fabric of their organization. So we don't want it to be like another rock on their path, but instead, like if you have a normal intake process, embed this into the fabric. If you have say you take vets out on a fishing trip, and you're, teaching them how to do fly fishing in such a way that you're building peer support in case they need to get referred into a therapy environment down the road, embed it into your fly fishing experience. So that's when we know it works well. When organizations take it, they write a policy on it, they put it into the fabric of the organization, and they collect data on it so that they know, like in my organization this year, we've served 200,000 veterans and we've screened all of them. And, this is the percentage that screened moderate and high. And here's what we did about that. We referred this group here, and like track them over time so that the system can then learn from that data and improve, so that we can do better in the field in terms of identifying risk.
And is this something that could be of use to, veteran ready organizations? Case in point, my employer, right? My day job, if you will.
Yeah.
I interact with all the veteran, I am part of the onboarding process for the veteran community. So I interact with all the veterans that come on board in my agency. And so is this something because I reach out to every single one as they come on board in the organization when we first hire. I'm like, is this something I could even implement into my welcome email kind of thing?
Yep.
I'm just,
Yeah,
so
that
this
would
is
be
something organizations
terrific.
can implement into their HR policies even.
Yeah, and the good news for the tool is that it's used universally outside of veteran populations. So like if you're pushing it out at the workforce level, you're helping vets and you're helping others.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's for good. And equally so, I've during a lot of the trainings that we'll give, I'll have some of the veterans say like, can I use this tool? Like I'm worried about my kid. Can I use it there? My nephew is actually struggling. He never served. I'm like, absolutely. It's not veteran specific. That's the goodness of the tool. And Dr. Kelly Posner, I should have mentioned her at the top of the call. She's the founder of the tool, the lead scientist. And she, has made the tool in such a way that it's free. So it's got the science and the academic rigor behind it, but there's no firewall where you have to pay for it to get deployed. And the whole idea is truly to save lives. It's like nothing more, nothing less. Like get it out near and far and help people, and that makes our experience. So
Yeah. So how do people get this tool? Like how do they sign up for it, get a hold of it, implement it into their organizations, get trained on it, like all that? Like what's that look like?
The easiest part out of the gate, everyone's using apps these days. We've made it into an app, and you can go on and just download the app. Part of why I always suggest that for people is the questions are scientifically developed, so every word sort of matters. You don't want to skip around. You want to follow the methodology because it's a standardized scale. So if you download the app, you have it with you at all times, right on your phone, and you can and I'll even say to people when I'm worried about them, bear with me, I'm going to pull up something I have here on an app to make sure I get it right. This is important to me that I get it right. And people are used to you grabbing your phone and pulling up something to show them or whatever. And I'll even show them there's a set group of questions here that I want to show you. And the first one is, are you having thoughts of do you want to go to sleep and not wake up? That's sort of the way the first question's worded. And you just kind of get right to it. And so people can download the app, and otherwise just pull up Columbia Protocol online and the questions will pop right up. If you want to be a partner agency, you can there'll be a contact us link through that site. And we'll come out, we'll do training, we'll send you the materials, we'll make sure you have access to it. The Lighthouse Projects will co-brand an app with you. Again, they do all of this with the grant dollars to try to disseminate it out as far as we can.
Very nice.
Wow. Incredible. Sean, what do you think?
I think
we're almost at time.
Yeah. I think we're at time, and there's still a ton of things to talk about. So I definitely need to look more into this organization, and I think the work is amazing, and hopefully we can make a huge impact here.
Yeah, I think we dove. Well, I didn't say too much. We dove a lot into the what it is and the how we get this out there. I think we need to dive into a whole lot more, maybe with another episode, because this is vital. It's, like I said at the very beginning, it sucks that we have to have another episode on this topic, but we're going to keep doing it until there is no more need for it. So, thank you, Keita, for all that you're doing. You mentioned how folks can leverage it and reach out at least. If they want to support the program, how can they contact you all to support, donate, whatever that might look like?
Just go to our site, the Columbia Protocol, and all the links will be there for getting involved. We're in the process right now of implementing a Train the Trainer program. Again, through the USAA grant, we're training other people so that we can increase our scale and our reach. Although Dr. Posner also prefaces that you can run with the scale today. Like, it does not need extensive training to be used in any way. It's 6 simple questions. Make sure you have the protocol for when they say they're high risk. I mean, that's the hard part. People struggle with, like, they'll get the courage to ask the questions, and then the first time you ask it, and you're asking someone, are you thinking of ending your life? And they say yes. Like, you have to be ready for the answer, and you have to be ready to stay with them and stick it out with them until they get to the right level of care. And over the years, people have thought that if they've asked the question, that maybe they'll give them the idea. Like, people worry, like, oh, if I mention the S word, and that's just not true. That's a myth. So, like, asking them, and if you have it wrong, if you ask them and have it wrong, they'll tell you real quick. Like, no, things are bad, but I'm not thinking of that. And you're like, okay, well. And I always tell people, like, just like when you work with veterans, and we have this, thank goodness it's down to 17 a day. We all know so many that have struggled. So that's why we ask. And if we have it wrong, it's okay. Just, I had to ask. I was worried about you, but I'm glad to hear it. And you just move right on. So don't hesitate if you're unsure to just ask, because too many vets have lost too many of their own to not ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Keita, so much for coming on
and
all the amazing work that the program's doing and the project and the protocol, whatever we're calling it, all these things now.
I know.
Columbia Lighthouse, and just, if you're listening and you know somebody or think somebody might be in need, or you or yourself are in need, look these folks up, reach out to them, get the help, because you are loved, you are needed, and you are wanted. So, again, Keita, thank you so much for coming on. This is an amazing episode, and for all the things that you're doing for our military community. And on behalf of the entire Vet S.O.S family, we want to thank everyone for spending their time with us today. It's always great having you all along for the ride. Don't forget to check out all of our other episodes and keep coming back for more stories, insight, and support from the Vet S.O.S crew. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a follow, share the show, and tell a friend or two. Toss your battle buddies, fire team shipmates, and wingmen that flotation device that they need in transition, so no one drowns in the sea of transition. And as always, grab the Vet S.O.S Lifeline.